Welcome to Out of Words, a podcast about being autistic, mental health, and life beyond the script. Today, we're skipping the small talk to discuss masking, or rather unmasking, in terms of being autistic and what that means. But first, I'd like to introduce ourselves because technically this is episode 1 of the podcast. For those that have missed it, we did have kind of episode 0, so make sure to go back and watch that and learn all about ARFID. But so my name is Kitty. I'm an autistic, obviously. I'm an autistic adult. I help run a peer support group in Louth for autistic adults. I do that with my co-host today, Philip. I'm training to be a psychotherapist. I've kind of been working in mental health for the last 15 years or so. And we wanted to do this podcast together because, well, just for a bit of crack, but also education, hopefully. Please be aware that while I'm training as a psychotherapist, neither of us are doctors. If anything medical comes up, we are talking about our lived experiences in being autistic and anything to do around mental health. Anything else you'd like to add, Philip?
Well, I suppose just introduce yourself quickly. I'm Philip. I also help run the peer support group here in Louth with Kitty. I'm an autistic adult. I was also diagnosed as an adult. I don't work in mental health, but I spent the best part of a decade working in the community sector, and also I'm an activist and organizer in the county as well.
Brilliant. Well done. This is Philip's first time live on camera. This is our first episode together, and hopefully many more. We will have some episodes as well with other co-hosts, but hopefully Philip will be joining me in a lot of them if he has the time. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, we'll need more mic ones though.
Yes. I have loads of colours.
You've loads of colours. Okay.
Just for those of you listening at home that are not watching this on YouTube or anywhere that there's video footage, our mics are attached to wands, and that's what he's referring to.
Was there? Because I wasn't given an option to pick a colour.
No, I just give you the blue. I thought you were giving blue vibes today, even before you came into the house. I don't know.
What were the other colours like? Could I have selected?
Over there. There's red, pink.
I probably would have gone with blue. Maybe I'm kind of.
That is blue.
Yeah, no, I didn't know what other colours were available. Now
I knew.
I could have gone red either. The colour of the labour movement and Marxism and all that. So I could have gone red either.
Okay, save it for there. That's not the topic today. Save it for. Save some of your socialism for later on.
I'm autistic every day and socialist every day.
And Republican.
If
you can see his T-shirt at home, by the way, I created these designs and I sell them. Real Republicans.
Plug your website.
Hate fascists. I will link it down below.
Yeah,
I will link that down below if anyone wants to buy one of those cool T-shirts.
Kitty Beansprout or something? Is that your crafty thing?
Kit Beansprout is technically the name, but I sell on like Spreadshirt and places like that. So
okay.
I will link it down below. Look at us, less than 10 minutes in, and we're already selling shit.
We haven't even talked about what we're meant to be talking about.
So let's get straight into it. You mentioned there, which I think is really important, is only having the diagnosis in adulthood.
Yeah.
And I think for our generation, we're, not to out myself here, but I'm 40. Philip is fast approaching 40.
I'm a sprite 36.
We're the same. We're basically the same generation, and I think that's so valid that there's so many of us that, like myself, either had kind of a half diagnosis until later in life, or people like Philip who literally you didn't realize until adulthood at all. Did you really? I mean, looking back, it was obvious, but
I was literally like 30, 31 by the time I started realizing I was autistic. I think a lot of people with neurodivergence who've just come to it in adulthood was during COVID when life just slowed down enough to think about things, and then
a lot of undiagnosed and diagnosed autistic adults did really well during COVID.
Yeah,
because they were like, "Oh, I can just stay at home and do nothing." This is fantastic.
When everyone else was freaking out about not socializing, I was having a great time.
Yeah, and I hate to say that there was any pluses or good things that happened from something so horrific, but a lot of autistic adults realized they were literally autistic. So that is something good, I think. So obviously, I think more than most people, you probably have experience of masking. And just to give a bit of a background, because I realize we haven't done that in case people have never heard these terms before. Autistic masking is basically when you subconsciously, or consciously, try to hide your autistic traits. And, there's various reasons why people do this. Again, it can be completely unconscious, especially if you don't know that you're autistic. But a lot of people do it to fit in either at work or in school. You might do it because you're being bullied, things like that. It's also known as camouflaging, particularly I think kind of the doctors prefer to use the term camouflaging, so you'll hear that term probably more so than masking. I think masking is more kind of the social preference, I guess. Um, and yeah, obviously, from even just I think from saying that, people can probably understand why masking might be a bad thing and something that we shouldn't do. It's kind of it's bordering on conversion therapy, this notion that like autistic people are wrong and bad and need to act neurotypical to get by in life, and that should not be the way. It's self-ableism in a way as well. There's a lot of inner work that we have to do. If you've been masking your entire life, which most people have, there's a lot of inner work that you have to do to try and kind of unmask. But I suppose for you in particular, because you weren't diagnosed, because you not even not diagnosed, I mean, that's only official piece of paper, but you just did not know you were autistic. So yeah, do you want to tell us about your experiences, I suppose, with masking and what subconsciously, unconsciously or conscious that you were doing, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think once you like figure out that you're like neurodivergent and you start considering about how you mask, you're almost kind of like unlearning things you thought you knew about yourself. Like, so one things that I realized looking back, and I thought everybody did this, that I used to like if I was going to be socializing, I would like I was going for an interview for a job or something, I would be like preparing
Yeah.
conversation topics
Yeah.
in my head. I'd be like preparing like questions I would ask someone, or answers I would give to questions, potential questions that could come up, or even like I'd prepare like jokes in my head,
Yeah.
and like because I knew if I could make people laugh early enough in the social interaction, I'd relax a bit more then, and I could
Yes. Yeah.
like I could be less sort of in my head and overthinking every word that I was saying. Um, but I thought everybody did that.
Yeah.
I just thought that's something people did, and it's only when you realize that you're uh that you're neurodivergent that you realize no, people don't do
Yeah.
that.
And I know, like, a lot of this, anytime, and this topic, and I know any topic that we're going to discuss, there will be a lot of people at home going that are not autistic, but that will go, oh, that reminds me of me, or I do that. And while neurotypical people will do these things to some extent, I think it's really important to not over pathologize, pathological, oh my God, you know what I'm trying to say.
Pathologize.
Pathologize, yeah, I kept mixing this word up earlier as well, having actually this exact same discussion. It's really important to remember that autistic traits are human traits at the end of
Yeah,
the day. And all of these things, all humans do, but autistic people, I think, I don't know, we make an art out of it, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
So I think it's important to recognize that everyone masks. And there's no shame in it. I hear a lot of people that I know kind of saying, well, I've never masked because it's an embarrassing thing to think of. But I know for a fact that there's zero chance that that person has never ever masked, because it's a human trait. Like, how have you never, you have done it. Some people do it more than others, absolutely, but I think it's completely wrong if you think that you've never done it. You have to reflect on that and do the inner work, and that goes for non-autistic people, of course. But yeah, as you say, I think that's really common. um Parents of autistic children often say that they've seen their kids, practicing their little social cues and their little conversations and everything else, like, and even just facial expressions and mirrors. Like, I know that a lot of little kids do that as well. I think you also bring up an important point there of kind of, the way we act around people. And I think it's important to note that camouflaging or masking is a trauma response. It often leads to us pretending to be a certain type of person, leads to us hanging out with a certain type of person, it leads to us fawning and people pleasing and all these kind of trauma responses. So it can be a very negative thing, because in the end, that can all, if you're doing something like that for years and you're hanging out with a certain type of person, um, and people pleasing constantly, by the time a young person gets to adulthood, there's a real loss of self. Who am I? I imagine even more so for our generation, the lost generations, if you want to call them that, of people who did not have that diagnosis on paper, kind of realizing in adulthood who I am. Did you feel that you had that? Was there any?
um, yeah. I think the going through the process of sort of you know realizing you're autistic and going and getting a diagnosis and the whole like journey that you go on with it. Um, I think it's like the emotions around it are mixed in that um like on one end I found that I wasn't as like hard on myself as I would have been. Like if I had like a cringy social interaction before that, it used to like
Yeah.
haunt me
Yeah.
for fucking years. Even though definitely whoever else was involved forgot it happened. Like did not remember
Yeah.
that. But then uh once I realized I was autistic, I was like, yeah, okay, so I
Yeah.
that's gonna happen to me sometimes. I'm not gonna read social cues in the correct way, and these sort of minorly embarrassing moments are gonna occur. But then there's like I think then when you think about how you've gone through life without any supports around it, particularly say in education or whatever, and
Yes.
so you start realizing the ways in which you were failed by like the system as well. Then I think there's like a you start to get angry about things, or you start to get you start to feel kind of little bits of resentment. I think in that way too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And while it's lovely to see that young people are way more supported these days within
Mm.
school and society as a whole, there's a bit of bittersweet there as well, because it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, we probably could have had way better school experiences if these things were picked up properly, acknowledged. I think in my case there wasn't a lack of acknowledgement, but there was a big secrecy I felt around it, and that's why I never really wanted to explore it, and that
mm.
really led to a lot of self-ableism. And then in my adulthood, I had to do a lot of work of like, okay, well, who the hell am I? But also, Jesus, do I hate myself? And I think you bring up another good point there about kind of that social interaction and feeling cringe afterwards. We're really, really harsh on ourselves.
Oh, very,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I don't
yeah, yeah,
think like we don't have cringe social experiences all of the time,
yeah,
but we still have that belief that we do. No matter what happens, we'll
yeah,
come home from the event and go, "Oh my god, I didn't people correctly there."
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think also we retain them more than I think
yeah,
say the neurotypical population does.
yeah,
Like they'll have a cringe experience and they'll have forgotten about it 2 minutes later. Whereas we're like, because we're so sensitive to the fact that they happen to us,
yes.
we hold them. I think.
We're sensitive to the fact that we know we're different,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
can very much feel that in social environments, but other people might not be able to feel that, but we
yeah,
can still feel that, and we're
yeah.
holding on to it. I think an interesting thing that I did probably in childhood, but definitely young adulthood as well, is that I would seek out a particular type of friend, not like a narcissistic friend or like a bad friend necessarily, but definitely friends that love to talk, so that I could rely heavily on them talking about themselves. And I quickly found out, and I know other autistic adults have said this, that you start to realize, oh my God, people love talking about themselves.
Mhm.
Just ask them lots of questions.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
people often thought I was a good friend because they'd meet me, and they met a version of me that was like very polite but very into what they were saying. Now, don't get me wrong, I also am. I mean, I am training to be a psychotherapist. I am into how people feel and think, and I think that interest comes from being autistic and watching the world, because I think we are little people watchers, even when we're very, very young, because we're watching out for like, oh, how do people act, and we mirror those people.
mm.
But in that respect as well, I also did notice that I was making friends with people that could take up the entire conversation. All I had to do was ask questions, and if they asked me a question back, I would often freak out. I'm a lot better with it the last few years, definitely.
Yeah,
I think my friendships have developed and changed, and I hang out with more autistic people these days, so I think that helps. But again, that comes back down to probably the like finding masking very difficult, but that was almost a middle ground because I didn't really have to mask if I just didn't speak.
yeah. If you're like because like definitely I would have felt like this like alien growing up trying to like
Yeah.
you know trying to get the humans to like accept me as one of them. I think when you feel like that, you're trying to take up as little space
Yes.
in a room as possible. So like you do tend to gravitate towards people
Yeah,
who want to take up as much space as they can. And
exactly.
there's a natural thing where you're going to balance each other out, and then yeah, then I think with where the masking comes in is that when in moments where you either want to or feel you have to take up some space, you need to have like your
Yeah.
that like version of yourself you want to present in this particular context. Like
Yeah. And there's a lot of negatives around suppressing our natural autistic traits. And when we talk about our autistic traits, for those of you out there that aren't autistic and you're wondering, it's not just like our way of being, it's things like stimming, for those that don't know what stimming is, it's any kind of repetitive movement. They can be healthy or unhealthy. You'll often see kids flapping their hands, or just kids even twirling around. Because as an adult, you recognize that doing those things in public are quite embarrassing. Some of us will maybe try to counteract that by doing like little small stims that people wouldn't notice, even just fidgeting with a pen, things like that. So there are healthy ways to balance that out where it's not completely 100% camouflaging and hiding who you are.
Or
But
even
just,
just like thinking about the little things that I think non-autistic people often that like don't think about. Even just think about the way you're sitting.
yes.
Am I sitting like a human? Do I
Yeah,
look?
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Or the way you're walking, like, are my arms moving too much as I walk? Am I?
And it's not always just like our self-consciousness coming
Yeah,
into
yeah,
play there. Like, we are sitting weird, and people have always said that to me. It's like,
yeah,
what are
yeah,
you doing?
yeah.
Like, what, or why aren't you smiling? And there's
Or
various
resting the
types.
autism face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's various types of like camouflaging and masking. And I think there's one thing I was reading about one time was like blank masking, which I thought was quite interesting, because I might have a blank expression, but I don't feel like that's masking. I feel like putting on a fake smile would be masking. And I've always heard from people, especially because I'm a woman, but I've always heard from people like, why aren't you smiling? Smile
Yeah.
more. And sometimes I think I'm smiling in a photo, and then people will make a comment under that photo on social media. And I'm like, oh, they'll be like, oh, you could have smiled.
Yeah.
I'm like, am I not smiling?
That's
Like,
why I hate posing but for just reasons I hate posing for photos.
yeah.
I don't mind someone getting a photo of me if it's like a candid photo where I don't realize I have a photo taken. But I just feel like if anytime I'm posing for a photo, I look like the biggest pile of awkward that is like ever
Yeah.
been seen.
Well,
I just feel like I'm like,
at least
ugh.
that's natural.
Yeah.
Looking
I,
awkward is natural.
I feel like I don't know if anyone has watched Friends, the episode where
Yeah.
Chandler's trying to take a photo. I feel like that's what I look like trying to take a photo.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like,
Yeah. um Copying like the kind of neurotypical gestures to blend in is something called mimicry. I often find that, like, I rarely come across that word, but just in case anyone comes across that word, that is copying kind of people's gestures and expressions to fit in, and kind of
mm,
mirroring people, which I think is just a big part of being autistic. And we're not saying, I don't think that it's inherently bad. I do want to come back to that point, because we're saying there's a lot of negative things about it. There are huge impacts to someone's mental health pretending to be someone that you're not, and hiding your true self. And of course, that's not something that we would want to that we would want to spread. That's not something that I think society should be aiming for. I think autistics should be allowed to be themselves, should be allowed to stim without people staring at them in public, should be accommodated in whatever way that we need. Um, but I do also want to go back to it being a trauma response. And especially because I'm training as a psychotherapist, and for any therapists out there that are listening or watching this, I think it's really important that if you have an autistic client, to just be aware that, like, the goal might not be to get them to stop masking 100%. Be aware of camouflaging and masking, but let your client be comfortable with you in their own time, in their own ways. Like, I don't think it's something you need to force on someone to stop masking. Everyone's on a different journey. Everyone should be masking, maybe to some extent, in the same way that neurotypical people mask or are different personalities around different people. Like, of course, you go into work and you're a different person than you're around your friend groups or your family. Of course you are. And that's natural and that's normal. And again, these are human traits. It's also just unsafe. If it's unsafe for us to unmask, we should not be forced to do it. So the environment needs to be safe for your autistic client or your autistic family member or friend to unmask around you. Don't take it as a personal thing if you've got a family member or friend that you feel is masking around you. It's like, well, they should feel safe around me. I think that's also a really important thing to note as well, that this is not a personal attack on you. It might be impossible for someone to feel that they can unmask, and there's a big safety thing around that. I think particularly if you're autistic and Black, or autistic and any other marginalized grouping. You've got like double the issues going on there, and we see it not so much in this country, but we do see autistic young men in particular, especially if they're Black, in places like America, where they're getting like shot down for like literally just being autistic. Oh, that Black man was acting weird, so
yeah,
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 shot in the face. That's the way the police are. And I think that is something we have to be very, very aware of. And I know it's easy to say, well, this is in America. Things like that still happen here. And I've definitely seen that happen to young autistic men here, being treated unfairly either by the guards or by the peers. Um, and anyone going through any mental health, I'm sure will have those same experiences as well. You're not allowed to act weird in society. So like I think we have to be very, very important that we're coming from a very privileged place, that we can unmask.
Mm.
You know, myself and Philip, for those of you that cannot see us, we are two white people.
Yeah.
It's very, and we live in a small country. It's very easy for us to just sit here and go, unmask, unmask, come on guys, let's do this.
Yeah, we both have secure living
Yeah,
situations, and yeah,
we've got like good friends, we've got a lot of
yeah,
autistic friends,
yeah,
and we've got a lot of understanding people around us.
yeah.
We also
A lot of
like,
community around us, and
we're
yeah,
we're middle-aged, so we don't give a fuck. There's a lot
yeah.
going on there that I wouldn't have been
Some of
this.
us are more middle aged than others,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, you no. But like I wouldn't have been like as confident like this in my 20s, and that's okay as well. That's okay. You know, you have to understand where you or your client is coming from in that respect. We are coming from a place of privilege, whereas I often hold back when I'm talking to young men in particular about unmasking. If it's not safe to do so, do not unmask. It's okay to mask under certain circumstances where you're around the guards and you fear you're going to get in trouble for absolutely nothing. You know, fucking mask up in
Yeah,
all respects around the
yeah.
guards.
Always mask up around the guards.
So yeah, I think that's a really, really important element to it. But again, masking constantly, and I think that's the probably the main point, is that while it's something that you can do sometimes, if you're doing it chronically and consistently, that's when your mental health is really gonna take toll, I think, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's exhausting.
Yes, it is
Like,
exhausting, yeah.
like burnout's a big aspect of being autistic, and particularly like social burnout, and a big reason for that is masking. In that, like, we're not uh when we're in spaces where we can be our like our authentic selves, it's not as draining. Like, I organized training for sort of understanding autism in the workplace by As I Am the other day, and they used the phrase like filling your cup. So for like autistic
Yes,
people, when we're
yeah.
getting to engage in things that we're interested in and that we don't have to mask while doing it, it fills the cup. But then when we're in situations where we're we're dealing with stuff that's not like feeding those interests, and that we're having to mask up, that empties our cup.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Um and I was going to say as well, because obviously we're coming from an adult point of view, but I know there's probably some parents, well, I hope there is some parents of autistic children listening to this, or maybe you're a teacher. You might notice that your child suppresses their autistic self at school. So you're hearing a different version of them at school than they are at home. And that's so common with autistic kids, that as soon as they get into the car or as soon as they get home after school, they're completely melting down, they're breaking down, or they're shutting down. And that is from masking. So much so that, like, you know, not all of these terms that we use in the autistic community are in the DSM-5, but camouflaging is, and the risks of doing so. So I think that's really, really important to note. You know, in the DSM-5 is the diagnostic manual for all criteria for mental health conditions. Like, so it's very, like, it's great that it's in there. It's very important and valid to note that as well. But this is why you might notice that your child is freaking out and breaking down once they get home in a safe environment. That is generally because they've been masking who they are all day. And look, if your child is doing that, that does not make you a bad parent. There's so very little that you can do that you aren't already probably doing, like making sure your child knows they're safe and secure. And again, that's why they're doing these things at home and not at school. And that's great that they feel like that. But just continue the idea with them as they grow and get older that it's okay to be autistic. You can't help at the end of the day how other people feel about themselves and how they react. And some kids will never really get out of acting in that way. Again, I'm 40. I really feel like I'm only understanding this idea of unmasking the last few years.
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, because you have to, like, first realize the ways that you're masking, and
Yeah.
that there's always layers to that. There's stuff that'll jump out of you immediately, like I think work's probably a common one, because again, I mean, everybody masks at work, but for us, it's just a more in-depth overthinking,
Yeah.
detailed level of masking. But there'll even be ways that, like, as you get older, that you won't realize, like, that you're masking, in that you'll have different, like, friend groups, and it's like, and you have different friend groups, like, based on different shared interests you have,
Yeah.
and it's like it's not like I don't think it's like it's a level of masking that leaves the social component, but it's like a lower level where it's like you're not engaging with that group of friends on the thing that you engage with that group of friends on, because
Yeah.
it's not a shared thing. So it is like it's a different version of you that you're showing that group, and not just
Yeah.
walking in and being like,
And that's okay
flying
as long
your
as you
full autistic
yeah,
freak flag.
like look, that's totally human, totally natural,
Yeah,
and that's why it's really important to notice like what's the unhealthy version of this and what's the healthiest version of this. And
yeah,
it's okay to feel and want to be a slightly different person around people, as
yeah,
long as you still feel you're being authentic, I
yeah.
guess, and you still feel that this isn't leading to an absolute meltdown. um and another point I was going to actually make is, because I know I've said that like there's reasons and places and times, of course, in your life when it's hard to unmask because it's, could be detrimental to your physical well-being or your mental well-being to actually unmask. And one thing I've noticed, and like this is such a silly little thing to even note, but I will purposely mask as in my hand movements, because I'm a very I don't even know how to call it.
Expressive.
Expressive, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't realize this until a few years ago when I started a different YouTube channel, and I recorded myself, and watching myself back, I was horrified. I'll be honest, I was absolutely horrified, because my hands were literally flapping all over the place. They were doing more talking than anything. It was so distracting to everything going on. Thinking back though, and I said it to my husband at the time, but like he was like, "You always look like that. I don't know what you're on about," which it made me feel even worse. I was like, "Oh my god, I had no idea." But also, like, I did start to suppress my moving then, and that's why I like holding things. And I've got like little fidgets and stuff like that as well to help.
Oh yeah, I've been even
But
sitting there playing with this the whole
that's
time as
why,
you're
and
doing
that
this.
is
Yeah.
why I've put the microphones on these. Yeah, like it's just yeah. But I have found, in fairness, like when I started to suppress that, I was annoyed at myself. I hated myself for suppressing any part of me. But being realistic, I do break things a lot less now. Like I used to, and I still do, but like I do it less. I used to, like, because my hands were so flappy, I used to like break glasses all the time, and then I'd have to
Oh yeah,
mostly
like
have
knock things
plastic.
over, and
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
same, yeah,
constantly,
yeah.
because I didn't recognize that I was just flapping about constantly. So now that I'm more aware of it and I'm suppressing it, which can be a negative thing, there is also like actually a positive health aspect to that. I am injuring myself and breaking things a bit less. So I've kind of come around to the idea that, do you know what, that's okay. I can live with that. I'm okay with suppressing that. I think it's what you particularly are comfortable with. As they say, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, and everyone is different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And even we all have different, like, um there's there's artistic people who don't overthink, like, they're like the body movement and what way they're sitting and what way they're standing, but they'll still overthink the social aspect,
yeah,
or vice versa as well. There's other people that are perfectly comfortable in social situations, but they're or like in ways that they communicate, but then they'll be like worried about their body shape or their
yeah.
hand movements, or I'm gripping this tightly now because I can feel myself going.
Yeah, yeah. The more we're talking about it, the more
But
flappy hand it would be.
flappy
Yeah.
handed. So yeah, like we're all different, like, but I mean, yeah, like for me, I would always, like, the biggest things that jumped out at me immediately was like the level of preparation I'd have to mentally go through for ahead of a social interaction.
Yeah.
If I had to make like a phone call for something,
Yes. Oh
oh
God.
my
Yeah.
god, or had to go into the shop and speak to someone to get something. I couldn't just walk in, grab what I wanted, and leave. If I knew I was going to have to talk to somebody about what I needed
Yeah.
to get, tearing up my head, right?
Yeah.
You know, look them in the eye when you're talking to them.
Oh, do you have any tips, do you think, for those out there that have like autistic loved ones in their life that they want them to unmask around them and feel more comfortable around them? Do you have any particular tips, do you think?
um, I don't. It's a difficult one, that, because like you said, there's not one size fits all. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like, maybe trying to engage them on say, a conversation topic that you know they're interested in, I think they'll naturally unmask when talking about something that relates to like a special interest.
Yeah.
But other than that, I just think it's like, if you make the environment around them just feel safe and non-judgmental,
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's the only way. Because I don't think there's you like, if you know the person, you'll figure out how best how approach it. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Exactly. Going back to what I said earlier about therapists, but it works for teachers, it works for friends, it works for family. The autistic person cannot unmask if the environment is not safe to do so. But again, also going back to, don't take it personally if you have an autistic loved one who you feel is masking constantly around you. A lot of people, especially our age and older, you've been doing something your entire life. You just don't know who you are anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can be a big struggle. And that's kind of where therapy can come into play,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people think there's no place for therapy being autistic. And while I absolutely agree in certain extent, in certain like behavioral therapies, absolutely not, for autism, if that makes sense. For other issues going on in your life, sure, maybe. But I think having the basic of therapy is just a safe space to even talk, to find yourself again.
Yeah.
Or to find who you are. It's all about the loss of self. And again, at that, like, you might think that you have no mental health issues, like, oh yes, I'm autistic, but I'm not depressed, I'm not anxious. But you inherently are. At the end of the day, if there's a loss of self in any respect, or that sense of self, then you do have mental health issues. And I do think therapy, you look at me already, episode 1, pushing therapy already. I think we'll leave it at that for today for our first episode. And is there anything else you'd like to add, Philip?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, I think it was good. Good round on unmasking. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is us unmasking.
Unmasked.
Unmasked. This is Kitty. This is Philip. This
Yeah.
is who we are.
And I think as well, just on unmasking, I suppose one thing, like, I think when someone's masking, they're generally often uncomfortable doing it, and people around them will pick up
Yeah.
on the fact that someone's uncomfortable, and then they'll start to feel uncomfortable. So I think if you can, help make it safe for an autistic person to unmask, I think everyone has a more enjoyable experience with them as well, because you're not like, oh, that person's really uncomfortable, that's making me uncomfortable.
All accommodations in life,
Yeah.
for any like disability, for any physical disability, for any neurodivergence, any accommodations in life help neurotypicals and they help able-bodied people. Like, so we
No
just
one
need
likes
them,
a big light on. You know what I mean? When it's dark,
I have
too bright.
I just to make that point though, I have terrible night vision.
Okay.
So technically I hate the big light, but I also love the big light because I cannot see even if it's slightly dull, because my eyesight is very bad. But I would not be the norm in that respect, being autistic.
Fair.
Yes.
Fair.
So I do prefer the big light sometimes, for eyesight.
Okay. We'll get you a wee flashlight or something.
Little laser pointer,
Yeah,
like
little
a cat.
That'd be around the place. Yeah.
That'll be our next episode. No, not really.
Yeah. It'd just be me down a laser pointer and Kitty following it.
Yeah, that sounds great. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. If you are on Instagram or on TikTok, please follow us. I will link those below also. And follow us on all your usual podcast places, including YouTube. Until next time, stay hydrated, punch Nazis, and live beyond the script. Go gentle, and we'll meet you back here.